Someone is going to tell you this myth ends with a monster. It doesn't. It ends with someone exactly like you trusting the one person who was supposed to protect you. Persephone, the daughter who vanished from a meadow, didn't scream first. She just noticed a flower in her hand was already dying. By the time the earth closed again, she was gone. And somewhere on Olympus, her father already knew. What kind of father lets this happen and calls it fate? Persephone looked exactly like you before any of this happened. Except she was already chosen. And she didn't know it yet. She picked flowers because she loved their color. She wandered from her mother because the field felt safe. She trusted the ground beneath her feet. Nobody warned her that safety was a decision someone else had already unmade. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't disobedient. She did exactly what any of us would do on an ordinary afternoon. She let her guard down in the one place she'd been told her whole life that nothing could reach her. Think about the last time you trusted a room, a relationship, a decision simply because someone you loved had already vouched for it. That's all Persephone did. The meadow wasn't dangerous. It had just already been signed away. Because here's the detail almost no one tells you about this myth: the abduction wasn't a crime committed in the dark. It was a favor, granted in daylight, by a god who never left his throne. Zeus, the king who ruled Olympus and kept his silence, had already said yes. Not to a monster. To his own brother. But here's what almost nobody tells you about this myth. Hades, lord of the dead who came for a queen, had asked his brother for permission before he ever touched the reins of his chariot. Think of the worst betrayal by a parent you've ever imagined. Multiply it by an entire kingdom's silence. The Homeric Hymn to Demeter names it plainly: Zeus consented before Hades ever left the underworld. No warning to the mother. No word to the daughter. This is what almost never gets said: the three brothers had divided the universe between them by lot, generations before this moment: sky, sea, and the realm of the dead. Hades ruled the largest kingdom in existence, and ruled it alone, without a queen, without a single visitor who hadn't already died to reach him. An alliance between brothers was worth more to Zeus than warning his own daughter what was coming. Hades wasn't cruel in the way the word kidnapper suggests. He was the loneliest king in existence, ruling a realm every other god refused to visit, feared by mortals who had never met him, and married to no one in 3 generations of Olympian weddings. That doesn't excuse what happened in that meadow. But it explains why Zeus found it easy to say yes. He wasn't protecting his brother from cruelty. He was protecting him from being alone. She fought. She called her mother's name into empty air. No one answered, because no one had been told to listen. That's the part that should unsettle you more than the abduction itself. Demeter, the goddess of harvest and grief, searched for 9 days without food, without rest, carrying a torch through every corner of the mortal world. Demeter didn't just grieve behind closed doors. She walked the world disguised as an old woman, refusing every comfort offered to her, because comfort was the one thing she couldn't accept while her daughter sat in the dark. Hesiod's Theogony calls her the goddess whose sorrow could starve the world, and for once, that wasn't poetry. It was a warning. Crops failed. Rivers thinned. Mortals began to starve for a grief that wasn't even theirs. And here's the detail that should have terrified Olympus long before it did: starving mortals stop making offerings. A god without worship starts to disappear. Zeus hadn't just gambled with his daughter. He'd gambled with the thing that kept every god on that mountain alive. Zeus had authorized a wedding. What he actually authorized was a famine. And still he said nothing, not because he didn't know what was happening to the world, but because admitting it meant admitting the decision had been his all along. Every other god on Olympus watched the mortal world wither and waited for Zeus to speak first. He never did. Silence, once it starts at the top of a family, has a way of traveling all the way down. Even Zeus's own messengers went to Demeter one by one, Iris first, then a whole council of lesser gods, each one asking her to end the famine, none of them asking her what would actually end her grief. They wanted the harvest back. Nobody offered her daughter back. That's the difference between managing a crisis and actually facing what caused it. Meanwhile, in the dark, Persephone stopped fighting, not because she'd forgiven anyone, but because grief needs an audience, and the underworld doesn't answer back. She learned the names of rivers no living person crosses twice. She sat on a throne she never asked for, across from a husband who, by most tellings, never once raised a hand to her. Somehow, that detail is almost worse. It would be easier if he were the villain. He wasn't. Her father was. But something survived that no one expected. And when you understand what this myth stops being ancient. What kind of father lets this happen and calls it fate? The kind who already knows fate is just a word for a decision no one wants to own. Zeus didn't fail to protect his daughter. He chose not to. Because in Olympus, an alliance between brothers was worth more than a daughter's consent, and no one on that mountain was going to be the one to say so out loud. That's the psychological truth this myth has been hiding under the word fate for 3,000 years. Betrayal doesn't always look like a monster crawling out of the earth. Maybe it was a parent who couldn't get involved in a decision that reshaped your whole life. Maybe it was someone who knew exactly what was happening to you and decided that keeping the peace with someone else mattered more than warning you. Zeus didn't invent that pattern. He's just the oldest recorded case of it. Persephone didn't lose her mother's protection because the world was cruel. She lost it because the person who could have stopped this decided a meadow full of flowers was an acceptable price for peace between gods. That is the whole myth. Not a monster. A man who said yes, and let everyone else absorb the cost. Somewhere, there's a version of you that already knows exactly which yes in your own life did the same thing quietly, politely, dressed up as something that couldn't be helped. And the cruelest part isn't even the silence. It's that he never had to answer for it, because myths don't put fathers on trial. They put daughters in the ground and call it a season. This myth isn't really about gods. It's about every family that's ever protected a decision instead of a person. Somewhere in your own life, someone said yes to something that cost you and called it out of their hands. It wasn't. It never is. Demeter got her daughter back, eventually. Zeus relented once the whole world was starving because of what he'd allowed. But eventually is doing a lot of work in that sentence. He sent Hermes to retrieve her, not because it was right, but because an empty world worships no one. Even the rescue was self-interest wearing the face of love. When mother and daughter finally stood in front of each other again, Demeter asked her only one question: had she eaten anything at all in the underworld? Not are you safe. Not what happened to you. Just, what did you eat? Because in this myth, even love arrives already calculating the damage. But Persephone didn't just return from the underworld unchanged. 6 pomegranate seeds bound her to go back every year for the rest of time. And that detail, the one everyone remembers as a trick, is actually the first choice anyone let her make in this entire myth. Nobody asked her if she wanted the meadow. Nobody asked her if she wanted the marriage. Somebody finally asked her if she wanted the seed, and by then, she chose to eat it anyway. Maybe that's not a trap at all. Maybe that's the only piece of this myth where anyone finally listened. 6 seeds. 6 months below. It's the first transaction in this entire story that Persephone actually negotiated herself, instead of having it negotiated over her head. This myth didn't punish Persephone. It punished silence. Demeter's grief starves the earth every single year her daughter returns below, and the world still calls it a season, like its weather, and not a wound that never fully closed. That's why autumn still feels like something leaving. Because somewhere, it still is. Every leaf that falls is Demeter loosening her grip again, on schedule, the way she agreed to, not because she healed, but because the world needed feeding more than she needed her daughter close. Even grief, in this myth, got negotiated down into something manageable for everyone except the two people who actually lived it. This myth didn't end when Persephone came back to the light. It ended when she picked up that pomegranate herself, in a kingdom no one gave her permission to want and chose to eat. That's a different story. And it's already begun.